I don't know how far like you take this. Like, are
Hmm.
you really saying that it's perfectly fine to skin animals alive?
Yeah, yeah, I would.
Yes, it is okay, but not in the sense you think. Morality doesn't exist. Values do. If someone values doing gross acts like this, then technically they're just doing something they want to do. But this sends warning signals to the rest of civilized society. This man has no empathy. He enjoys the pain of a conscious creature. He's likely a risk to everyone else. And if society deems torturing or killing animals to be that high risk, we'll throw him in a box. Now, let's push this logic to its extreme.
You're basically saying social contracts are what essentially make it right or wrong to kill an animal. So because an animal can't form a social contract with you, therefore it's okay to kill an animal.
Oof, yeah, that's it.
Like that is your argument. I just want to make sure.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, well, the thing is, like, this kind of falls apart when you put this in an anthropocentric context, because if a human being can't form a social contract with you, does that make it okay to kill that human being? So, like, I'm not even talking about, okay, like, horrible, violent. I'm not even talking about horrible, violent criminals. Like, obviously, when they break a social contract, we, put them in jail or prison or something like that. What about like uncontacted tribes people, where if they see you, they'll like try to attack you and kill you on sight? Do you think it's okay to massacre like indigenous populations?
People can massacre an uncontacted indigenous population, but it usually isn't a good idea. There isn't much to gain, and there's a lot to lose. There's nothing meaningful to conquer. More importantly, there would be massive social outrage. Additionally, the indigenous people would fight back, costing lives and property. This is why it's a really good idea to avoid people who don't respect social contracts.
I don't know if morally I would say like, oh well, it's not okay to I guess genocide that group of people, since they're never capable of reciprocating that social contract.
People who don't respect social contracts are your enemies. These are people who steal from grocery stores, riot in the streets, destroy property and businesses, and murder. People who refuse to respect the property and autonomy of others will ruin your life. That's why they ought to be ousted from society.
You don't see that as sort of a double standard, where this really doesn't become something about a social contract. It's really more to do with you just being kind of biased to your own species in a sort of illogical way.
There's nothing biased or illogical about disregarding your enemies. If someone really is anti-civilizational, then the rational thing to do is neutralize them in the most profitable way possible. They have no value to society and ought to be treated accordingly.
Well, I mean, I would argue that I am biased towards my own species for sure, because it is my species, right? Because you have a chance. Like, for me personally, that's where a lot of the social contract comes from, right? Like, it's a self-interested point of view. Like, I respect your rights to live and exist because I want you to respect my rights to live and exist, right? I'm a human, you're a human. We share these kinds of values with one another. And again, like, that's something that we can reciprocate, I guess, because we're humans, that other animals can't necessarily reciprocate.
The important thing to remember here is that people who don't respect the social contract are functionally no different from wild animals. If they have no problem harming or murdering you, then you ought not afford them the same respect.
If you came across a tribe of people, whatever, and these people were never ever, like, I was assuming, like, in your world, say these people were past the point of ever being integrated into society, and they will constantly try to kill other people, I would say that in that case, yeah, sure, it's okay. I would find it morally, I guess, acceptable to genocide that group of people or whatever.
Only if the consequences were positive, but that's not likely. It would probably be massively unprofitable, highly risky, and socially self-destructive. So it's really not a good idea to do massacres.
This sort of comes back to the name the trait argument, though. I guess you are choosing social contract, but like, the issue I see there is, if you're going to say social contract is what ultimately makes something like morally justifiable, then basically anyone at any point could just say, like, I don't choose to have a social contract with you.
And then that person dies.
Like, again, it's basically a might makes right argument. You're not, like, what you consider moral doesn't have anything to do with actual outcome of a situation. It's just whether or not somebody can, like, reciprocate these moral values with you.
Morals aren't real, but values are. And people who don't reciprocate the social contract are very low value. That's why they have no place in society. The genius of society is that the intelligent people come together to multiply their labor, resources, and well-being. They do this by cooperating and silently agreeing not to steal from or attack one another. By doing so, everyone's life improves. I want a better life. You want a better life. And a better life comes at the cost of removing those who have no interest in sustaining one.
Real quick, just to kind of draw into there. So one thing that I get uncomfortable with when people make certain arguments is when you start to get into like really gray, arbitrary areas. When you say things like we are more intelligent or have more emotional intelligence, why do you reach a certain level where all of a sudden that emotional or intellectual intelligence makes you worthy of life? But like what level? How does that magically, like what threshold do you cross that does that?
Most people don't know what they're doing, so they call it morality. It's actually just personal belief. They call it morality because they want it to sound stronger than it actually is. At bottom, it's just something they like.
I think it's reasonable to say that if we can recognize that a creature is sentient and has, or at least has some level of sentience and can experience pain and suffering, I think to some extent it has a right to life, but like where I draw the line is like, okay, what is the most reasonable way for me to exist in the world while causing the least amount of suffering or death possible within reasons?
But notice that he just said,
I think it's reasonable.
And
I think
one of those begs the question, and the other is just a judgment.
You're trying to pivot. You're pivoting away.
Saying it's reasonable after Destiny asks what makes it reasonable is not an answer. And the other answer, what I think amounts to, is based on the epistemology of the person thinking, not on any justified moral fact.
Like, I can just very easily choose not to consume animal products. Like, I can very easily choose not to buy meat from the grocery store. It's just a very reasonable, common sense situation where I don't have to support that sort of pain, suffering, and death, and I can live quite comfortably.
And any meat eater can very easily choose to eat the product of some nameless animal that suffered to get onto the plate. It's neither morally reasonable nor common sense to reduce animal consumption until you've proven that case. Could the pain of the animal be overwhelmingly disproportionate to the pleasure of the consumer? Yes, but it ultimately doesn't matter, because what matters is the value judgment of the powerful. Humans have decided that animal pain is worth their pleasure, and so that's how it is.
Let's say you're driving a tank, okay, and you saw, like, I don't know, bunny or a squirrel or something crossing the road. Would you slow down to not run over that animal?
Yes, but only because the cleanup would be awful.